My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sivasankaran, and Guru Piran, fellow Jnanis. Today I'm going to speak about chapter 15 of Mahan's I God philosophy. And in this chapter, he calls it the points of serious consideration. And here I'm going to touch on a whole range of issues that impact humanity. And Swamiji speaks about universal peace, but when you see around, there is no peace out there. I visited the US and I thought that the discussion today will be very timely. Coming from Malaysia, a developing country, we have seen, Malaysia develop significantly over the last 60 over years. But yet we have pockets of our own social challenges and issues. And we'll come back to why these are happening. But when I visited the United States, I must say that, being a developed country, a first world nation, the most powerful country, the most richest country. So if you see the most technologically sophisticated country, the most powerful in terms of military strengths, the most scientifically developed country, and I visited many of these places. But the one hand, you see so much development, so much positivity, so much vibrance, but also you see the other side, which is there's so much racism, there's so much discrimination, so much inequalities. I saw famine there, people starving, people have no food, no place to live, sleeping on the streets where the weather is getting colder, right? So I visited that one hand to see that reality. And of course, we don't see much of this in Malaysia these days, although there are poverty, pockets of ghettos here and there. But the weather is not so bad. But here you see that the weather is getting cold and people are, and it's not just the old and the destitute. You see young kids, teenage kids, begging when they should be in school, right? And I had a chance to visit the White House, and we went into the White House, but outside you see a lot of demonstration and so on. So reflecting back on all the progress that we have made as humanity, right? We still see a lot of social injustice, a lot of issues, and the whole question is, what is enlightenment all about, right? So it reflected to me, in this chapter when Swamiji was speaking about the first 14 chapters about philosophy and, respect, reverence, all those things. And then he brings this chapter in, chapter 15. It reminded me of two important personalities. And the first one, let me come to this personality, which is essentially Buddha. He was a prince. He had everything going for him. But the moment he stepped out of his kingdom, he saw so much misery, so much human sacrifices, so much poverty. And he asked this question, I'm going to be future king of a kingdom that has got so much social challenges, social issues, so much misery, why would I want to inherit a kingdom like this, right? And that's what made him think very deep on what this human life is all about. I saw this in the US and I see this here regularly. Many of them are highly educated. Many of them are professionals, but many of them suffer, depression. Of course, the weather doesn't help. It's always gloomy. Many of them have, mental challenges. They're highly, very successful professionals. Some of them are extremely very wealthy, but yet when I met them, they say, Guru, uh, we seem to be okay outside, but deep inside we are not happy, right? So very similar things Buddha experienced. And the same thing, another personality experience is Sri Rama. If many of you all have a chance to read the Yoga Vashishta Ramayana, Sri Rama was supposed to inherit the kingdom. But when he was insulated from all the miseries, because you're living a comfortable life, like Buddha, everything is provided, you've got servants, you don't need to worry about things. But when he stepped out, he saw so much misery, so much poverty, so much inequalities, so much injustice. He came back and said, I don't want this kingdom. At the age of 16 years old, he went into a depression. He didn't want to bathe. He didn't want to do anything. And his hair was growing and all those things. And his father, Dasaratha, said, how can my eldest son, who's supposed to inherit the kingdom, be so disillusioned? And he speaks to Vashishta, who's a guru, somewhat like Swamiji. Please speak to him. Please bring him out of this doldrum. And Vashishta Dev says, I know what the problem is. And this is also beautifully also captured in the Bhagavad Gita. The first chapter is Visada Yoga. Visada Yoga is the yoga of turbulence, challenges, and so on. Right? So I'm giving you parallels of what Swamiji is writing in this chapter of all the challenges of life, what Buddha experienced and saw, and turned to enlightenment. Sri Rama experienced the same thing at the age of 16, 17 years old, until Vashishta Dev says, Sri Rama, I am going to take you and transform your mind, educate you, illuminate you, inoculate you with the vaccine that will help you overcome all the social issues and challenges, and for you to lift everybody out of this doldrum or these challenges. In the hands of the Guru, he was able to make that transformation. The entire description of this is captured in the Yoga Vashishta Ramayana. Many of you all know the Ramayana. Some of you all may not know. Of course, we have the polished Sri Rama. Everybody wants to be like him. But the best way to attain a good illumination is to see somebody who is polished in an unpolished way, and what took them to that polished mind. And that Yoga Vashishta Ramayana actually captures that. So in this, let's look at what are the things that we experience, we have seen. And most often people have become silent observers and say, oh, okay. Ultimately, we see that while we may not be affected by poverty and all those things, and we are silent, the mind absorbs this negativity. And ultimately, there comes a stage where it sinks in us, it gets to the core of our DNA. And this is where we start saying, what is this life all about? Life is meaningless. And I've seen this in many, many highly educated professionals who are very, very successful that have gone through this, and ultimately, their quality of life becomes really bad. So here, I want to touch on, we have so much in this world, yet we have famine. We have so much opportunity. Nature has given us so much things, yet we abuse nature so much so that we create zoonotic diseases and pandemics and so on. I had a chance to visit the African American Museum, and I think if you all have a chance to go to the US, you should see the really tough life of slavery. I mean, if you want to talk about hell on earth, there, and it was created by human beings on hell on earth, right? How much cruelty that we, as human beings, can inflict on other human beings, far less on nature, right? What motivates people to do this? And that's what I think we all need to think about, because sometimes the demons are not outside, the demons are within our own mind. And you'll see that I'll speak about this on Saturday on Deepavali, the slaying of the demon called Naragasura, right? The same thing we saw in World War II. I went to the Holocaust Museum. And again, the abuse and the amazing, I mean, if one watches those things, tears will flow. But how can human beings be so cruel, right? But of course, these are not isolated things. We see this every day in our lives today, trafficking of people, the miseries that we as human beings have created, the racism, the abuse on the planet, the poverty. We have abundance of food, yet we see people are starving, right? The abuse of, people who have different lifestyles, right? A lot of unemployment, and there's massive social issues in spite of evolved and call ourselves developed society. And Swamiji reflects on this back, and he says that spirituality is one thing, but part of spirituality is also to be able to harness that peace. And one of the things that he realizes that material success need not lead to contentment, fulfillment, the life of what he calls sandosam, santam, calm, sublimity, and the ability to overcome all challenges, the dosam, right? So we may have studied in university, do postdoctoral research, become a great scientist to solve all the problems of the material world, but yet many of them unable to solve their own challenges. And this chapter is really profound. Swamiji explains how, poverty, the unkindness of human beings to oneself, to animals, to the nature, ultimately brings back that negativity and all those things back to us. And that's why, he starts off with this piece. And we have to be conscious as human beings that there are limitedness in the human consciousness, but that limitedness can, be overcome through a self-exploration, self-discovery, deep introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation, and what this purpose of life is. The moment one becomes enlightened, the moment one understand the purpose of life, you see the world in a different context. So I'll give you my experience in the US, speaking to many families that have challenges, children, highly educated family on drugs, depression, and so on. And after speaking to them, with all in the kind of teaching them how to practice meditation, and also speaking to them, slowly you see many of them, shed their tears, and then they become more inspired. And clearly, I think while we have, as humanity, taught, we have so many things in university. The word university comes from the word universality. That means comprehensiveness and wholesome. Unfortunately, in many of our universities and institutions of learning, we only teach about the material world. We do not teach about that inner strength, the inner power, that divinity in us. So we have a quasi-university. The true universities are the ones that actually teach us about the inner resource, inner strength, to be able to harness that immovable, that immovable substratum in us, unshakable substratum in us, that immovable substratum that moves everything. No university teaches this. And this is where gurus like Yoga Vasishtha, Ramayana, Adi Shankara, Jesus Christ, I was, prior to going to the United States, I pulled out all my early research work on the Christian theology, on the 7 churches in ourselves. And we see that in many of these scriptures, the push is to discover the inner temple, that inner strength through introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation. Very similar to what Yoga Vasishtha was teaching to Sri Rama, very similar to what Buddha realized from all his teachers that showed him the path of that inner journey. And that's what we're going to be discussing on Saturday of the Deepavali, which is the Deepavali, which is the light within us. And when we unlock the light within us, we see that the path of enlightenment, Deepavali, Vali means path, that light that is lit within us shows us the path of enlightenment. So when somebody touches on all these issues of social inequality, racism, profiling, health issues, all those things, it is because of our blemished mindset, that a limited mindset, fragmented mindset, that essentially conditions ourselves. The moment we start going deep down and slowly wiping out that blemishes and polishing it better, we see that there's no more refraction of light. It's pure divinity that is within that percolates this. So here we see that in all our lives, many of us have gone through challenges. We will continue to go through challenges, right? Life is about the sukhas and the dukkhas. Some would be very successful in overcoming it. Some will succumb to it. But many will be continuously riding these waves and asking the question, what is this life all about? Is this it? Right? So you're going to see many, many facets of your life. But I can tell you something. Anybody that goes deep down within themselves every day, touch that core, right? The surface waves will dissipate. The more deeper you go, you would not feel that waves. Very similar to a diver. At the surface, you'll feel all the turbulence and so on. As you go deeper and deeper, the waves subsides. Ultimately, you don't feel the waves of the surface. And if you go deep enough, there's an inner current that drives everything else. And this is what Swamiji in this chapter tries to explain, that while this human life is about changes and experiences and the sukhas and the dukkhas, the only way to overcome this is essentially to go deep down within ourselves. But more importantly, when one catches this inspiration, right, and this is the next part, which we covered in the last chapter, is actually about the respect and reverence to your own life and the lives of others and nature. So these are two, not mutually exclusive, they are interdependent. So when we do not discover ourselves, the respect for who we are as a being, not as a material identity, not as Professor so-and-so or Doctor so-and-so or Judge so-and-so or CEO so-and-so, right? But that inner divinity that is transcendental to this form and name and position and title, the deep core of who you are that is transcendental, and having that awesome respect for your own sense of who you are, and the confidence, that the ability to have the sublimity of the mind and the clarity of the mind to know who you are. You see that no matter what comes, no problem. bring it on. We will be able to become transcendental to it. Now, when you catch that wind of that divinity, it's like a sailboat, someone on a sailboat learning to catch that wind, compared to somebody who's got a sailboat but yet doesn't know how to catch the wind. They'll be always going in circles, right? And that's why they always get caught in all this, issues and stuff like that, right? Somebody told me, I don't watch the news because every time I watch the news, it's all depressing. It's about war, it's about suffering, it's about this, it's about cheating, it's about that, and so on. I say, I don't bother. But if you have that full confidence in yourself, doesn't matter. Yes, these are challenges, and you know how to become transcendental. But more importantly, you ask this question, yes, all these are on the surface, and I know how to go deep down within me to be sublime. But more importantly, how do I help others to also attain that transcendentality? So most people become silent people. Okay, I'm happy, everybody else. But you see great Mahans and great saints and people like Vashishadev and Jesus Christ and Mother Teresa's and say, look, yes, I've captured this wind of divinity. I know how to capture this sailboat that is called life. I'm going to teach others to catch this. And that's what, without any expectation, right? And when we learn to catch that wind, like the sailboat, your sailboat need not be millions of dollars and sophisticated. A simple boat, and if you learn to catch that wind, you could move faster than somebody with a more sophisticated boat, more sophisticated life, but yet is unable to catch that wind. And it comes with that self-respect, that self-commitment every day. You cannot afford to not immerse your mind that is going to immerse in the material world, immerse in the divinity, so that when it takes on the material world, the material life, you're able to become transcendental. And this is what Swamiji teaches. He starts off with chapter 14 of respect and reverence, to oneself, the people, to nature. You got to love your life. Don't love other people's life. Love your life. You see that, the people around you, their lives too becomes better, right? And stand up, speak up for the truth, help people, give them that support in whatever way you can. And you see that, whether racism or poverty, communities were able to overcome because a few people stood up and said, look, this is how we're going to do it, right? So in this context, part of spirituality is not just sitting down and shock sindiri, meditating and, okay, I got this vibration, right? So it was very interesting. I was speaking to a surgeon that came for practicing. Of course, he was very skeptical in the beginning, and I gave him the explanation, the scientific explanation, and he said, you practice this. And of course, he's very successful, but having a lot of challenges, family challenges, marital challenges, very successful surgeon. So after 3-4 days of practicing, he says, he called me by my name. By the 4th and 5th day, he said, Guru, can I speak to you? I said, sure. So almost every day I've been speaking. He says, when I'm in a surgery, it takes me 8 hours because I'm always thinking if somebody's going to make a mistake, anesthetic, this, that, worried about family. But after practicing meditation, what used to take me 8 hours takes me 3 hours to complete that surgery, and it's crystal clear. The mind is clear, focused, and I feel a sense of, control over everything. And that is the experience, he says that, and he feels much better, right? The same thing with people that have got a lot of challenges. I realize that most people have knots in their head, right? And they're pulling in different directions. I was telling someone this analogy. What the Guru teaches you, like Vashishadev or Adi Shankara or Mahan says, no, don't pull. Step back a little bit, observe the knot very clearly, and your mind will be very clear to be able to how to slowly remove the knots. It may take time, but at least slowly the knots start coming out. And when the knot comes out, the mind becomes free, the information becomes smooth, there's a sense of clarity. Whatever problems that the mind, or whatever problems that you're experiencing, other experience, you're able to, with clarity of thought, be able to solve. Okay, we have famine, right? Let's see why the famine is there. What can I do, right? With all the ideas, let's find solution to this famine. You may not solve the world's famine problem, but at least you solve one family's famine problem, right? The same thing with the social inequality, people unable to get access to education. And you say, okay, what can I do? Maybe they don't know. Inform them, help them with the forms. The same thing with abuse and mental illness or challenges. Okay, don't worry. You do this, follow this. So it's about unlocking that knots to be able to overcome these challenges. And this is what Swamiji in this chapter 14 talks about, and he raises this in chapter 15. And if you look in the Bhagavad Gita, Visada Yoga, it's all about this. And to overcome this, one needs Sankhya. Sankhya is knowledge, and then Karma Yoga, duty and services. Then moves to Jnana Yoga, you get wisdom, and so on. So we see that Swamiji explains that, it starts with that self-introspection, contemplation, reflection, meditation, and also, more importantly, being able to spend that quiet time with yourself, to be able to understand your own purpose of life. So this is what I learned, in my journey, and continue to learn. And this is what Swamiji's teachings, I said in the last time, that, that we all are going to go through challenges, various difficult experiences, good experiences, difficult. But when we have that clarity of thought, Swamiji says that the cry for the removal of defect is God, because the transcendental substratum is transcendental to all defects, the blemishes in our mind, the biases that we carry with ourselves, And more importantly, he says that when one attains that pristine mind, not only transforms one's own life, but transforms the lives of others, is God incarnate. So you walk the talk. That means that you transform yourself and transform everything that comes into your contact. And that can only take place if you have that respect and reverence for yourself and others and nature, and have a good understanding of how all this is important to solve whatever challenges that you, your family, or society has. So in this, he reinforces life is going to see a lot of challenges, but through this practice of self-exploration, self-realization, one is able to do it, not only for themselves, but for the others. And that's what we're going to be speaking about this week and during the Diwali function. What that function actually means, right? And come on Saturday, I will speak about it, and perhaps next week I'll speak a little bit more on this journey that we have to take, the festival of light, the festival of, that discovery of that inner self that slays the demon in all of us. So with that, I will stop, and I'm happy to take any questions. Next week, I'll speak a little bit more in detail on some of the things that we already have covered to transform the mind into a powerful mind, not only to solve the challenges that you experience, but to address global challenges. How all of us can play a key role in wherever we are to be able to make the lives of others better and address some of the global challenges, at least in a small way, that if enough of us do it, I think we can make a major change. So with that, I will stop. Sandosham.